In this video, we're going to go over the interface for FreeCAD. I've received lots of feedback and people are confused by how this interface looks. If you've never seen CAD before, that's perfectly understandable. And again, a lot of us assume that you've already seen it and you already know where to go. And so we jump right in and tell you to start in a workbench or whatever. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the start page, the layout of FreeCAD a little bit, and then we'll go into the workbenches, take a look at some settings that you might want to just tweak a little bit, and then we're going to look at where to start with a model. So when you're looking at a piece, how do you go about coming up with the first steps of a model? And then I'm going to emphasize keeping it simple, so I try not to make anything too complex from a sketch standpoint, and we'll get into that. I'm going to talk a little bit about sketches. Not going to go into great detail because we want to keep the video reasonably short. And then we're going to talk again about pad and pocket, because that's the basic commands, the basic things we're doing to build our model. So watch right through to the end, because you're going to see how to create your first model. So many of you, when you start, are going to see this start page, and the start page is the default. Now, I don't usually use the start page, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to check this box here. It says don't show the start page again, start with a blank screen. I'm going to select that. But for you on the start page and you want to start a new file, then just hit that parametric part, and straight away it'll create a body in the unnamed file, and so you're ready to go. It'll also put you in the part design workbench, and we're going to talk about workbenches in a moment. So the first thing is, let's look at this environment. Now, most of you, you may have this tasks piece maybe over here, under here. I separated mine because I like the tasks to be over on the right hand side, and you can move these around. So if I take this, you see the blue shape is where it's going to land if I let it go. So I'm going to let it go here. So this is the model tree, and so grab it from there. I'm going to put it over here back where it was. So this is the model tree, and in the model tree you can see the model that we're creating, and then there's properties for each of the objects inside the model, and here's the data for those properties. And here's a view of those properties, so it tells you things like the drawer style and the bounding box and all of that good stuff for this body. So these two here are what I normally keep on the left-hand side, and you can change the view of those. You can change the way that they're set up. So all I did was hit that little box up top here. So you can change the way they're set up. Usually this is on the left side. Usually this is tucked behind it. I put mine on the right side, and again, watch the box as I move it over here. I'm not up the top, I'm to the right, and I let it go. And then I hit that little box there that says toggle overlay, and it'll pop it up just like that. Now, if you toggle that overlay, it disappears all the back part, so it's like it's floating there. And you can do the same on this side. You can toggle this overlay and it looks like it's floating a little bit. I don't usually have mine that way, but you can if you want to. I normally have mine like this, and so I have my tasks where it says tasks here. They're going to be on the right hand side, and the actual model is going to be on the left hand side. So again, it's very flexible. And you're going to see, if you look at other videos, you may see other people have different styles and things set up. So let's think about what are workbenches. So workbenches are analogous to specialized stations in a scientific lab. So imagine that you're going to do a specific experiment. You have a special lab for that. That's what a workbench is. And a workbench is a specific kind of module. It's equipped with its own user interface components, such as toolbars and menus. And each workbench is tailored to a particular type of task. So when you change workbenches, you're going to see that the set of tools and controls visible in the user interface adjust to reflect that specific workbench. And that makes sense. You want to make sure that you have the tools available for the things that you're trying to do. The actual project contents or the scene that you're in, they're not going to change. The model's going to stay there. When you switch workbenches, if you go from part design to part or some other workbench, your model doesn't move or change. What happens is the tools available to you change. And so you can switch between workbenches without affecting the model at all. So I'm in FreeCAD. And again, this is version 1.0, release candidate 2. Now, when I start my FreeCAD, I don't have the start up. I just have the part design workbench. And this is where you select your workbenches. So these are all the workbenches that are available to me. And you can add workbenches. So you may not see all of these in yours. You're going to see the main ones. Part design and part are the ones we use most. And then, of course, we use Sketcher, but we don't typically switch to the Sketcher workbench manually. That happens when we're creating a sketch. I'm going to show you that real quick. Here's part design. So I'm in part design. And it's important to know when I'm doing things which workbench I'm in. Because if you change, as you can see, the icons change if I go from part to part design. So what's available to me changes. Now, as always, when I'm in part design, I want to start a new file. So I hit this button over here. That gives me an unnamed file. And to get a name for that file, I just save it. So if I save that as, I'm going to say File, Save As. And I'm just going to give it a name here. So I'm going to call it A1. So now my file is called A1. I can call it anything I want. And then, as I said, I always use a part and then a body. Now you can just use a body if you want, but I use a part to keep those bodies organized. And then the sketch. Now watch when I hit sketch. I'm going to pick X and Y plane for the sketch. Say OK. And now it's switched to the Sketcher workbench. And notice all my icons are different. These are all pertaining to sketches, which makes sense because this is what I'm doing. So remember our analogy was we're in a scientific lab. When in my scientific lab, when I'm doing sketches, I want all the icons to be for Sketcher. If I close this, it'll switch back automatically to part design or whatever workbench I was in. And now I'm back with the icons that work in part design. So that's how this interface works. I'll show you how you can change some of the settings. If you go into Edit and then you hit Preferences. Now under your preferences, you can set up things like your theme. So I have mine in FreeCAD Classic. And you can change that to however you like it. And if you want more themes, you can go to the add-on manager from here and you can set up those themes. Now, as I showed you in the last video, the size of my toolbar icons, I have mine large so that you guys can see them. So you can make changes here. One thing I want to show you here too is in the workbenches, you can have your startup workbench and you can change it to be whatever workbench you like. I have mine as part design because that's where we're going to do most of our work. So that's under workbenches, available workbenches, and you're going to choose part design as your startup workbench. Now I'm just going to say OK to all of that. And now let's talk about the layout a little bit more. So this area here is where the model is going to be. Up in the top right, you have a cube here that shows you the orientation of the model. And so you can orient the model any way that you like it to be. And then up here is your toolbars. Now, one thing I want to show you about toolbars, if you have a toolbar where something is hidden, you may have to drag that toolbar. And you can also move the toolbars around. So you may see your icons in a different order to mine. I have my undo and redo buttons in the middle here, but you might have them somewhere else. And if you look closely here, if you see those two little right arrows, if I click those, it's going to show me what is missing on that toolbar. So right now my refresh is hidden. And if I touch these dotted lines here, I'm going to zoom in so you can see. If I touch those and move to the right, now that undo button appears. So if you're missing buttons, the chances are your toolbar is covered, and so you're going to have those little arrows, and when you click them, these pieces will drop down. I like to have mine spread so I don't have to go to the drop down, and partly that's because I don't know what's in the drop down till I touch it, and so I don't like to have to do that. So even with the larger icons that I have, I'm able to open up all of these menus to get all of the things out. Now the ones that have a drop down, single drop down arrow here, that just means that there are options for that command. So you can create a datum plane, a datum line, a datum point, a local coordinate system. So again, those are different to the drop down that you might have. Now, as I said before, your view may be slightly different to mine. You can reorder these things. So I can take this and I can move it to wherever I want to move it to. It's part of the flexibility of FreeCAD, but also part of what makes it a little bit more difficult when you first start because you don't know where things are going to be. So as far as the layout is concerned, you can change it. When you change it, it will remain like that. When you exit FreeCAD and you come back, it's still going to look like this. If you lose one of these views, you have to get the view back, and you can do that by going into panels, and you can see your model and tasks I have open here. There are other views I can have open, but I don't. So you can see model is checked, that's that one on the left, and tasks is checked, that's that one on the right. So if they disappear for some reason, that's how you're going to get them back. So familiarize yourself with the layout. Once you have the layout arranged the way you like it, that's going to stay that way, and it's going to make it easier for you to work. Now, one other thing I want to mention, the circle on my arrow, that is a piece of software that is separate from FreeCAD. I only have that so I can show you where my arrow is easily. It's not part of FreeCAD. You don't need it for FreeCAD. I do it for the video so that you can see what I'm pointing at. Now, one thing that happens with mine is if I press my right mouse, you'll see the mouse and a right red there showing I'm pressing my right mouse. Same if I press my left mouse, if I press my middle mouse. Again, that's all a separate piece of software, not something you're going to see in FreeCAD. Now, in addition to that, if I type something, you'll see it comes up on the right-hand side, just here. That, again, is a separate piece of software. I did that just so you can see what I'm typing. It will disappear if I don't type anything, so you'll be able to see the full screen again. So don't worry about those bits on my video. Those are things to allow you to see what I'm pressing. And one other thing I want to show you about my setup that may confuse people. I have this down here set to Blender. This allows you to pick how you want the buttons to respond. So you can have different buttons, or the mouse responding in different ways. I have mine set to Blender because I'm most familiar with the Blender setup. So when I use Blender, it means my middle mouse will rotate the view, and it means if I press shift on my middle mouse, I can move the view up and down. So if you watch this little box up here, if I middle mouse, you can see it moving, and that's because I'm rotating the view. So if you want to copy me, if you want to do the same mouse presses as me, choose the Blender option. If you don't want to do that, you can choose any of these options. Just make sure you know how that correlates to your mouse buttons. Okay, so now we have our layout, we have our tasks. I put mine on the right. You can have yours wherever you find it's best. I have my model on the left. Now let's talk a little bit about how we go about doing a design. And what I want to do is I want to show you something that I'm going to create a model for. And then I'm going to talk about how I would go about figuring out how to model that. Now, if I look at that part, what I'm considering is how best to model it. And what I'm looking for is anywhere where there's symmetry, anywhere where there's something that's similar that I can copy. So I'm looking for things features that stand out that I can use as a way of recording or a way of generating a model that's going to be a facsimile of that part. So we're going to work from there. So if we look at this shape, you can see obviously this shape like this would be a good start for us. So I'm going to rough the shape out, and I'll show you how I get to what I'm doing. So first thing we're going to do in FreeCAD, we have the part design workbench, because when we start up now, that's going to be our workbench. I press a new file. Immediately it comes in as unnamed. That's not a problem. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to create a part and then a body. And so this is going to be where I create my sketch. Now notice that in the model tree, the part is to the left, the body is inside the part. If I close this little arrow, the body disappears. He's inside that part. If I open that arrow or drop that down, you can see the body. My sketch is going to appear under this body. Now one thing that may happen is if your body is not the active body, your sketch is going to be outside of that body. So to make your body active, you can right click and you can click the active body at the top. Now it's not active, right click, active. And when you right click, you can see there's a little check mark next to active body. That means it's active, and it'll be bold as well. Now I'm going to select sketch. Now watch these icons change. When I select sketch, I go into my XY plane, or I can actually go into the XZ plane if I choose. It doesn't really matter for this. I'm going to do it in the XZ so it's standing up, but you don't have to. So now these icons have changed to my sketch type icons. The first one that we're going to use is this create polyline, and this will allow us to draw a shape. Now what I'm going to do is just pop that shape back up so I can see it. And I'm going to draw it in a different orientation. So I'm actually going to draw it with this being the top and this being the bottom. So I'm actually going to draw it in this orientation. So if we just pop that over there, and I'm actually going to just put it here, and I'm going to draw it this way. Now if you watch when you draw, if you look, if I go here, see that little line popping up? That means it'll be a horizontal line. It's not the end of the world if it isn't when you first start, because you can always change it. And I'm just going to do this. And again, I'm just doing a rough shape just to get started so that we can just see what it looks like. I'm not going to complete this model in this video because we don't have time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create that. I'm going to quickly go around here. I'm going to make this horizontal. So we just use this icon. This sets things horizontal or vertical. Don't worry about all of this. I'm going to show you all of that as we move on. But I'm just going to create them all horizontal just for looks. And I'll make these vertical. And there. So that's all I'm going to do for this model. You can now see that I have that shape, which is similar to this shape. It's not exact, but it will do for what we want, just to show how to create a model. And remember, we talked about pad and pocket. So the first thing we can do is pad. Boom. And there you can see I have a shape that looks something similar to that shape that we had there. Now, that's not how I'm going to complete that model. I'll show you that in another video. But I just wanted to show you how you can quickly take a shape, look for an orientation that you want to draw it in, and then from there, using pads and pockets, we can create it so it looks completely like this. We can make an exact model of that. And of course, we're going to do some measurements and all of that. We'll do that in the next video. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you hit the like button. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep these videos going, and hopefully this approach is going to help you to get started much quicker, because I'm going to try and cover the basic things that a lot of times videos just assume or they overlook. And so if you have any input, please let me know. I do have a list started, and I will address everything that's been brought up so far, and I'll continue to do that. If you leave a comment, I will make sure that we have everything that you ask about covered in the subsequent videos. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.